It's very unscripted. So, yeah. So we could just run with it. So, are you ready to go?
Yeah, sure.
Well, everybody, welcome to another episode of Talk Story Unscripted. And as you can see, Doug's not here. And Doug is taking a break because he's had such a crazy week. He's been finishing off this incredible documentary that he's been working on, and it's finally finished and handed in. And of course, whenever that happens, especially from a creative point of view, you just collapse. Ugh.
Yeah.
So he's exhausted. So I've got a new sidekick today. She's actually an old sidekick. Not that I'm saying she's old, but she's new. She's new to those of you who are watching this. And this is Kerry Hasenbalg. Is that right? Is that the right way to say it?
That's right. Great guy. Challenging name.
Yes. Oh, Scott, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But Kerry, I am so glad that you're here on Talk Story with us. And I know you're probably a little bit nervous, maybe. Are you nervous? No, you shouldn't be nervous.
Well, it's nice to see your face because you're such a familiar face for me.
Yes.
And you make me happy.
Oh, heck yeah. And you make me happy too. It's really great. You know, we've been friends for a long time. There was a huge gap in the middle of that. I remember the last time I saw you before we took off, you told me, hey, by the way, Pete, I'm a terrible friend. I never communicate with people. And I'm just letting you know that now. So don't feel bad if you don't hear from me. Well, you lived up to that. How many years later? It's like, oh my God.
I keep my word.
You kept your word. It was really true. And I was fine with that. And every time we get back together and we talk on the phone or whatever, it's like no time has passed, you know? And those are the good kind of friends. And I'm sure everybody listening, most people would know what I'm talking about. There are friends.
Yeah, the no guilt friendships are the best.
Yeah. And you know, if you're going to be a friend of Kerry's, then you definitely have to have that written into your contract with a friendship with Kerry. But you know, how have you been, by the way?
So we've been really good. It's been really good. I mean, you know, what is it? Sheltering at home is a little bit challenging. It's probably less so for me since we already homeschool our kids. But it's challenging. It's hard to get toilet paper even. And
yes. And so
the pandemic hasn't hit Pennsylvania in where we are in the rural area that badly yet.
Well, that's good. That's good. But you are in is that called like the upper East Coast of America? And I'm over here in Hawaii. So same thing here. It's not a big deal. I guess if you're going to be stuck in a stay-at-home pandemic, Hawaii is not a bad place to be. However, we can't even, if you go out and sit on the beach and watch the sunrise or the sunset, the police will tell you to move on, which is kind of
for real.
Yeah.
Wow.
For real. So you kind of have to be careful. You can go out and exercise. You can surf. You could stand up paddleboard. You could swim. You can run. You can jog. But if you're sitting, you got your towel out on the beach.
Wow.
They'll tell you to move on.
Yeah. So that's a whole loitering into a whole new
level. Yeah.
A whole new
pretty
level.
Interesting. Yeah.
You know, we have an interesting sort of thing about the town I live in. We have more doctors per capita than any other town in the world.
So that's a good place to be.
Which is an interesting thing right now. So we're kind of like, there's a little bit of security in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, and I heard that it was snowing where you're at today. Is that right?
Yeah. I love how up on you. Yes, it's snowing, and the trees had started to bud, and then we had a snowstorm today. I mean, it's so weird.
That is so weird. That is crazy. Well, it's sunny here as per usual. It's sunny.
I know. I'm jealous in the best kind of way. Happy for you, jealous.
It's good. It's good. And snow's pretty cool too, though. So, how the heck did you end up in Pennsylvania? Well, that's where you're from, correct?
Yes. So I'm actually living in a mile and a half from the house I grew up in. Wow. I guess we came here because Scott used to travel with Stephen Curtis Chapman doing orphan care ministry things when he would go on the road. And I was having babies and Scott was feeling guilty about leaving me so much. So we decided to move me close to my family.
Oh,
so that I get a little help. Yeah. It's been great. It's just, I think the Lord just had that for us.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about a little backstory about you and I. So you and I met.
I'll start laughing.
I know, it's okay. You can laugh. You and I met in Oceanside, California. And I had just come back from Australia. I had to come back because the visa was over for me. And you were studying, correct me if I'm wrong, you were studying at Calvary Chapel Bible School.
That's right. Yep, that's right. I had been a missionary in Russia right after the wall came down, and took 2 more years away from my parents' plan for my life and my plan for my life, and went out to study the Bible. And you became my favorite friend in my season of like major life transition. You were in life transition, and we were good friends.
Well, yeah,
our pain.
I think that was the thing that connected us, is that we were in transition.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I was definitely trying to work out where things were going to go. And I was eventually, in that time, I knew I was headed back to Australia to marry Sharon. And and I remember, you know, let this be on the record. Kerry was the one who was constantly saying, yeah, that's what God wants you to do. Go. You know, you need to go. And I'm like, I don't know. And I was really kind of trying to work it out. And you were always encouraging me. And that was
I'm
great.
so glad you listened to me.
Yeah. I listen to God, you know, but yes, to you too, for sure.
God speaks through people.
What's that?
God speaks through people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But that's definitely the thing. It was that common bond. I mean, it was hilarious. You and your 2 roommates, right?
Yes,
you guys were like
Danville.
cracking me up. I was working with a band called The Cry. I was managing them, and we lived in this big house together, me and the 2 brothers, the French Canadians. And then literally, I think I moved in one day, and then that night, I think it was a Friday night, all of a sudden the house was filled with all these people, and you were there, and a couple other, there was a few people there. I'm like, what the heck did I get myself into? And, you know, and you guys were it was just like a fun party. Not, obviously we were all believers and whatnot. It was really fun, but I was just a fish out of water. Yeah. And then we connected.
I look back at my time and I'm like, oh my gosh, the stupid things we did. I mean, I remember one night I didn't eat, but I served for all of us. I think it was Jean-Luc's chocolate covered coffee beans that he was going to give to somebody for Christmas. Yeah. And a couple of us decided to dye our hair in your bathtub and forgot to clean it up or everything. Like, we are such bad people.
Oh yeah. It was crazy. It was so funny. And remember that time, I'm sure, I don't know if it was at our house, but it was at somebody's house. Was it Larry's house? We ended up baptizing somebody in the bathtub. You remember that?
Yes, I do.
So fun.
And that was the night that there was milk. It was like a bunch of bachelor men that were in love with Jesus. And I was thirsty and I got a drink of milk, and it must have been 100 years old. And I thought, people live like this. Yeah,
it was pretty bad. But hey, what can you do? And so now, here we are now. Can you believe it? I'm living in Hawaii.
I'm so jealous.
In Pennsylvania. I moved from Australia to Hawaii, and I'm working for this TV station. Now, it was a year ago. Can you believe this, Kerry? A year ago was the first time we saw each other physically with our families. Well, you with Scott anyway.
Yeah.
And then Sharon and Jude. You met Jude. And you guys came to Hawaii and did a Becoming Married Couples Retreat.
That's right.
Remember that?
Yeah, amazing. That was so with the 12 couples who now all just completely love you and Sharon, I mean, what God accomplished in that time was something beyond anything I could have imagined. I mean, it was the perfect place. It was the perfect group of people. I mean, it was really our first pilot for Becoming in Marriage. Yeah.
And, you know, by the way, you were planning to do this in Italy.
That's right.
And then that fell apart. So tell that story. What happened? Next thing you know, we're in Hawaii.
I know. So we went to Italy to do sort of a pre-trip, and none of the women I went with had a piece about going. And then we had one of the men in the group say, I really think you should do it in Hawaii because it's the closest thing to Eden. I thought, well, that makes sense, you know? And then God just made a way for us to have a house for a much less expensive than normal because of this man who'd just come to the Lord that knew my dad in college. And I thought, okay, well, this seems to be falling in place. You and I reconnected, and you were like, Sharon and I can help you. We'll handle like organizing stuff on the ground. Yeah. And the Lord just saw fit to make it perfect. Scott and I were actually just talking about how every single thing pretty much went perfect except for Scott and I on day 1 and 2. Do you remember?
Yes, I remember.
So Scott and I, we were really prepared. I mean, I really think we prepared pretty well. And the first night, I don't feel like there was really any power to the teaching. And after it was good. You know, it's like when you experience a sermon that's factual but not empowering. And then Scott fell in the koi pond. You remember that?
Yes. Poor guy.
Yeah,
in the dark, by the way. This is in the dark.
It was in the dark.
There was this pathway that wasn't straight, and it kind of did a quick left and a quick right, and he went straight and right into, yeah.
We had some doctors on hand, but he got pretty hurt. And then the next day, where'd you take us to do the devotion?
Oh, was that on Lanai Lookout? When we looked, yeah, and yeah, Scott couldn't come.
Yeah, because he couldn't hike down.
Yes, that's right.
Which was a beautiful spot. Really sad Scott missed it. And then, so the teaching really started to get better. And then I went mountain biking and went over my handlebars twice.
On the North Shore, for those of you here in Hawaii, on the North Shore in Pupukea, crazy bike trail. I've never done it.
Crazy. Yeah. And I went over my handlebars and I got back on because we were where you can't get out of the trail. And as it turns out, I was concussed and didn't know it. And so I went over my handlebars a second time and separated my shoulder.
Oh my gosh.
And then the teaching was awesome because I think God got Scott and I out of the way, but nobody else got hurt the whole trip. Yeah.
You guys were out of the way and the Holy Spirit had his way.
Yeah,
that sounds like that rhymes. That's pretty good. So that was your first married couples retreat, but you've been doing this for a while, this thing that you call becoming. And as a matter of fact, yesterday, was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday, my wife was on a becoming retreat, virtual retreat. Is that what you're calling it?
I mean, yeah, an online, we called it a becoming online retreat because we don't know what we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you had how many people tune in? How many devices and how many people were actually connected online for this thing?
So we organized it in less than 2 weeks and we had 119 devices and a few more than that in the number of people from a number of different countries in most states. And then since then, we've had another 20 people register. And I mean, they pay to register and we send them whole retreat packets of things. And it's been amazing. Yeah, it's been great.
All right. So why are people signing up to this thing? I obviously know the answer to this, but please explain to us, what is the distinctive of becoming? What is this thing? Why are you calling it becoming? All that kind of stuff. Give us in a nutshell, what is becoming all about?
So becoming really, I mean, it represents beauty, right? Something that's becoming, and movement. And it's really about looking at the places in our lives where we've gotten stuck in our soul, like our thoughts or our emotions or things that have happened to us in the past, and applying scriptural truth with tangible, practical, spiritual exercises that get those things moving again in God. And so really what we do is we look at this scripture and this story in the context of my life right now in the need I'm facing. And so it really has the same effect, ironically, on new believers and people who are teaching ministries to lots of people. We just did a retreat, I don't know, maybe a month ago, right before the COVID lockdown, with the band and the family, the band for King and Country. And they've grown up in the Word. They're a homeschool family. Rebecca St. James is their older sister. They didn't need to learn a lot more of the Word, but it was getting together to practice these spiritual tools in the context of what's going on in their story right now. So it's kind of like therapy meets spiritual teaching in the context of the Word and what's going on for me right now.
Okay, so some people might be thinking, well, what is this? Some sort of Christian voodoo thing, right? And they're going, wait a minute, whoa, what is this? So Kerry, you're freaking me out here. So So what is that? How does that even work? And is there some sort of scriptural foundation to what you do? Or where did becoming come from?
So, well, we have the word becoming because I think that's the best version of God's name as Yahweh. Because when the Israelites came out of Egypt, God told Moses, tell them that it's Yahweh who's calling them out. And Yahweh is usually translated, I am, but probably the best translation is, I will be what I will be, or I'm becoming what you need me to be right now, or I'm causing you to become. All of that's wrapped up in this name of God as verb. So the Israelites, if you look, at the Old Testament, his name is used over 6,000 times as Yahweh, usually with an attribute after it. So like Yahweh Yireh, or some people say Jehovah. So Yahweh Yireh, which is the God who sees me. That's what Abraham called him. Or Yahweh Shammah, the Lord who's heard me. But it's after something happens in their life. Abraham went up the mount with his son to sacrifice Isaac, and God saw the situation, saw to it, and provided the ram. And he said, I will call you Yahweh Yireh, because you have become to me the God who sees me. And so that's how the Israelites did it. And so we use about 330 key scriptures in the context of all 12 of these practices. I didn't make them up. I found them in the Word, and I found them in the Word because I had suffered greatly for a number of years. I had been pregnant 8 times, and 4 of those children went to heaven. And I lost most of them late, 1 at delivery. And so I needed to know that all the Bible teaching that's in me was true in the context of my neediness, that God can make my ashes become beauty. He can turn my mourning into dancing. And so I just started using these tools, and they're super simple. Like it says,
so really
go ahead.
So I was just going to say, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. So, so really this whole becoming idea is a fruit of your becoming. You talked about Abraham and many others that went through and they named God. They gave God a name that related to where they're at and what they were going through, and how God had met them and promised to them and that type of thing. So it sounds like you personally went through your own becoming. And that's very typical that as a believer, God will bring you through something, but it's never to hold on to yourself. It's to share it to others. And is that what's happening right now with becoming?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's funny that you're the one talking to me, because you know that I'm kind of a mess. And I mean, that.
Kerry always had this saying. Hey, Kerry always had this saying. She goes, yeah, I'm just average. And that became the big joke. Yeah, we're just average. We're not like great. We're not terrible. We're just average.
Just average.
And I remember we always used to laugh.
You're like, you said, but you're the only average friend I have. All my other friends are above average.
Yeah, it's so true. That's not true, but it's just funny because I love it, because when you think about it, there's some real beautiful things about that. And I literally mean about average. That God meets us, God meets us. No matter, we don't have to be super. I remember when I became a Christian, I used to think, I don't have a great testimony. I didn't kill anybody or get drunk. I did get drunk because I was a high school kid and all that. But there was nothing really worth talking about. I was average, And I think there's a lot of people like that. They think, well, you hear these tremendous testimonies, but who am I? I'm not anything, right? And yet, no, there are things. So from becoming a Christian and going through life, I think that's when I went through above average situations that weren't good. I mean, bad things, and same with you, Kerry, dealing with, the loss of these children. That would have been terrible.
That's right. The pains. And I think, so growing up, I grew up in a Christian home. I mean, I wasn't a PK or an MK, but my parents were really ministry minded. And so we went to all the Christian rallies, and I went forward at all the altar calls, because I wanted more, and all that was being offered was getting saved. So I got saved like a lot.
A lot of times, yeah.
Right? Yeah. But becoming addresses the issues for people like me and you, which is just because I know all the scriptures in my head, and yes, I believe the whole Bible's true, I don't believe them in the context of my story experientially. And so becoming's really about, okay, what's my need? What do I learn about God? Now I actually own this belief in my story, and I don't have to pretend that it was heart belief when it wasn't. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. So I knew this was going to happen, Kerry. We're going way over time because you talk too much, because you're just average. I'm joking.
I'm above average talker.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to end this session, and we're going to keep going. We're going to have a part 2, okay? Because I have some more questions for you. But if there's one thing you could sum up for people who are watching, let's end with this. First of all, those of you who want to know more about becoming, we're putting the website address right there on the screen, so you could go check that out and maybe sign up for one of these retreats, which I highly recommend, by the way. It's really good. But Kerry, we're living in this situation right now where everybody is stay at home, alone. And I'm sure there's some people that are dealing with the frustration of that, whether it's emotionally frustrating or even financially, things like that. What can you share with them as an encouragement to keep going? Hey, you're not alone in this. What would be your encouragement?
I think my encouragement is a little less, I don't know if it's less comforting, but don't waste the time that you've been pulled back in. God does this. He allows us to be pulled back in. And one way that they would cover over the pandemics back in the days of the bubonic plague was they would whitewash, but the decay was still underneath. And I think the Lord is asking us to go deep and get healed while we're at home, where things we've left unmanaged, manage them and deal with them with God instead of just whitewashing over them, because we can come out of this better, not worse.
Yeah. So how does one do that? How would you recommend them doing that?
I mean, I think it's just actually applying the truth of faith. You have things that you need. Don't just think about them. Actually ask God to help you. Like, name the things that are broken and make your request before the Lord, because He will answer. Write them down. Just write down what you want from the Lord and what your heart's desires are, and watch Him answer you.
Amen. That's great. Well, Kerry, thanks so much for being part of Talk Story Unscripted. It's so fun to be on the line here. Who would have thought we would ever be doing this? 2 average people.
No, I would. I know. Look at this, an average program now.
Yeah, totally. This is a very, I won't say if it's average or below average or whatever. It's very unscripted. This is a fun program that we've put together. And it's kind of, here's the benefit of this whole COVID-19 thing, is that I can actually connect with somebody across the country in Pennsylvania, and we could do this show. How fun is that? And that's something that we could not normally do, because normally we would be, it's funny thing, Kerry, is we were just about to start producing this show, Doug and I, and going to locations in Hawaii, your favorite spot. Like we're going to go to Lanai Lookout, and we're going to shoot there, and we're going to do this Talk Story thing there. And that was the plan. And then all of a sudden, now we're stuck in homes and we can't do this. And
what used to be cheesy is now great. Like, Zoom's a great way to do an interview.
Yeah, it's better to be at home alone, right? And we can still do this program. So that's awesome. So thanks, Kerry, for being part of this. And stay tuned for part 2 with Kerry. We're going to get in deeper into some of the things that you do with becoming. All right? God bless you guys.
God bless you.